Okay, there we go. We welcome you all to the July 24th regular meeting of the Brattleboro Housing Partnership Board of Commissioners, being held at Moore Court Community Room, 22 Moore Court, beginning at 4:29 p.m. So welcome everybody. Glad you all could join us too. Okay. Has everybody read the minutes?
Yes.
And does anybody have any questions about the minutes? If there are no questions, then may I have a motion that we pass them?
A motion that we approve the minutes for June 26, 2023.
And I'll second
A
it.
second, great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that passed. We're delighted to have you both. And what are your names?
Lynette Thomas and Nicole Walker.
Wonderful. Delighted to have you. Great. Okay.
Been here for 42 years. How long? 42 years. Raised 3 children and then going on grandkids.
Wonderful. That's great.
Well, I don't raise the grandkids. Mommy does, but.
Okay, Christine, the Executive Director's report.
Yep, I just, in case the residents have any comments or questions that they wanted to add, this is the time to speak up if you want to add anything.
The subject I want to get onto, we better talk in private.
Okay, that's fine. But if there's anything for the board that you'd like to tell the board. or
Black
anything-
bags, okay, got me out of there.
Okay. Is that about trash?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you're required. There's been a lot of diapers and going into composting. I just,
Just throwing everything in there now because they're mad at us.
And Lance, he's a really nice guy, but he takes out people's trash and literally takes it to the high rise. And so that's been a problem right there. Like, he literally cleared everybody's trash cans and took it out of the high rise.
So it's great that you give us that information. I know that Courtney has been, these are issues that we are looking at. I know there has been some question around so we have dumpsters. We put them at Ledgewood Heights. It's a pilot project and the board was aware of that and they approved for us to go forward with that spending, specifically because Moore Court has such a high number of people living at that housing site. It's more than double, it's almost triple, I think, of the number of people versus here. And the landscape is much smaller, so they have a smaller area. So we're really trying to look at that as an opportunity to see what works and what doesn't work and to learn from that because it's such high usage. But I do know that the bags, hold on one second, but the bags are, it's a town rule. And so to take on the additional expense at this point, we have to really look at it. The other thing about Moore Court that's a little unique, different from any of our other housing sites, are that you're able to have washers and dryers here at no additional cost. And we haven't charged a fee for that for a long time, for over 3 years. And that is a considerable expense for the water and sewage. So it's just, we try to look at all the housing sites and see the pluses and minuses of each site and the expenses. And so in terms of fair housing, it's not always exactly the same because, there might be a benefit here that they don't have there.
Is there something I could do, like go down to, or we could do? We could go down to the town, not here, but to the town and talk about trash bags. I mean, we are in low-income housing. Some days I cannot afford $30 for trash bags for 5 to $15 for 5. I just can't afford it. So what do I do in that case? I have done recycle, compost, in the trash. I've done everything. I've made sure everything was in its place. But some days I just can't afford the $30. Now, am I supposed to go down to the board for the town and talk about the trash that way, or?
I mean, you could go to the select board and talk
Select
to
board,
them.
that's
You certainly could. I mean, it was talked about at great length when it was passed, and there was a lot of discussion around people with lower income.
I'm not trying to be mean to anybody.
No,
But as I said, if one person is going to take 4 apartments and ignore everybody else, it's not fair. This is what I've been
yeah,
thinking
and
the whole time.
we shouldn't be bringing people's household trash to Sam Elliott. So that's an issue in itself. So that's something that we are going to address. It doesn't necessarily mean, so I think there's two separate issues.
Yeah, okay.
There's an issue of that there are things going on here that are, if somebody's breaking a rule, then we have to address that separately. That's one issue. But then the other issue is the cost of trash removal. And I think, you know, based on I think we are going to do a cost analysis of just how much it would be if we had to charge for the washers and dryers. And then if we charge for those instead, then maybe we could do the trash instead. But you know, it's kind of like one or the other.
Two disability people can't
The
afford
laundry.
$1,000 a month rent, anything.
Well, that is, you got people bringing their laundry into Moorcourt and.
That's been going on for years, that I can vouch for.
So that's a whole other thing. And we really, you know,
They have a washer and dryer on.
I think it's nice that you are able to have that here, and I think, you know, I know that it's the expense of having the washers and dryers themselves, but we, you know, we're not able to do that at Ledgewood Heights because of the makeup of the buildings and the way that it's set up. We can't add that to the buildings. So they do have to pay, and a lot of them go to the laundromat, you know, which is a big additional, not only is it a cost, but it's also an additional, you know, pain.
Yes.
We do have the laundry facilities there, but they're very small, as you know, and we get a lot of, you know, people sometimes would rather go to the laundromat. So I think that is a benefit of this housing site. I think that if we were to charge for the usage, it would probably be higher than the bags. Okay. so I'm just letting you know where we're coming from. So we're trying, you know, we would rather keep the laundry separate and allow you to keep the laundry, but at the same time, we might not be able to do for the bags. I do know that there's a lot of education around how to maximize the use of the purple bag so that a family could have
If
one,
you
maybe
do it right,
use one every 2
right.
weeks or something, which even though it's $3, it isn't.
We do
this
3
expensive.
every 2 weeks. So it's probably not too bad.
So that's
Because I make
$9.
sure that it's,
Yeah. It is an expense for sure. Yeah.
just
it
gotta
is.
pay attention what you're throwing out.
Yeah, and it's not just here. I think in the community as well, people struggle with buying those bags sometimes, for
Maybe
sure.
I can get with the RAC so we can have a meeting for getting people in the neighborhood to understand,
Mhm.
not criticize, just understand what the trash's gotta be put in it.
Mhm.
It's 30
Maybe
pounds,
there's
I think, or something.
Maybe there's a way to buy a bag one at a time. That's
So
sort of,
there is the
There is.
town clerk's office.
Mm.
See, she's got that.
Yeah, you just
Yeah.
go in and pay.
Are there any other items you want to share or concerns?
Nope, just the trash.
But I understand it's frustrating when other people aren't following the rules. That is probably the biggest concern we have on all of our property sites. Whether it's trash or something else, when everyone's following the rules except for certain people, that's really frustrating. And that is something that the property management will definitely address and probably has
And they
already.
get frustrated and they keep doing it, so.
Mhm.
It is what it is. What's that saying? Catch 22 or whatever it's called, I don't know.
Thank you for sharing. It's a
Yeah.
very important
Sorry,
topic.
probably should just.
No, it's good for the board to
No,
hear. I think
it's
it's an excellent conversation. It's good to hear what the concerns are of the property, whether or not the board can address them at this moment or not, but it's important for them to know.
We have a block party, guys?
Yeah, so that is something that I know that the resident services has already talked about since we met, and that's in the meeting from the notes from the meeting that we were all at here. And that is something that they are planning to do, some sort of get-together, communal get-together for the whole community here.
Yeah, so we got new tenants and
Yeah.
nobody's really come out yet, and
That'd be
we're
nice.
trying to get people involved. We got Bonnie White here for the cooking
Nutritionist,
program.
yes.
Good,
Yeah.
excellent. Yeah, that's good. Okay.
Your report?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to report. So we've had a busy month, as you know, and I think you'll see that is evident in a lot of the reports from the different staff members. Let me find my report. I sort of messed up my. I was looking through everything before I came. Let me find it, because I know if I don't, I will forget something.
Do you need a copy?
What'd you say? I must have it in here somewhere. It was probably the last page, maybe. Let me do one thing before, so I'm not holding on to everything. I wanted to pass out for the board, you don't have to look at this right this second. These, if you don't mind passing these down. This is just the last report from the engineers
OSLR?
for Melrose.
Okay.
I think that should be enough.
Mark, we can share. We'll share.
Sure.
There should be 5, I think.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so let me take that out of my plate and then let me look for the. So one piece I would like to talk about a little bit from my report was just around Melrose Terrace. So you know that we had a substantial amount of flooding, and which was good. That's exactly what we wanted to have. And actually, maybe I'll look at yours. Sorry. So we had a substantial amount of flooding at Melrose Terrace, and that was good. That was what the flood land was for, the flood mitigation area. There's 5 acres there of flood mitigation, and we filled about 4 and a little more acres, almost 4.5 acres with water, which substantially lowered the flooding upstream and downstream. So the engineers came out right afterwards. There's pretty substantial amount of movement in the area, just because of the high density of the water and how fast it was going. We have brought in, we will bring in Zaluzny again to do some further work. You know, we're learning a lot from these floods. We've had 3 floods since the mitigation started, which is pretty impressive. So we're really able to look at how the water flows and to sort of tweak certain areas. In the beginning, when we had started this project, we always knew it was going to primarily be flood mitigation, but we thought when it wasn't flooding, that it could be used as a park. We really rethought that area. We're pulling back the benches. We had benches all along the brook. We're pulling them back to the higher flood level, because we realized that in having those benches there, it's really hard for people people love to come down and look at the water. Mm-hmm. So when they come down and look at the water and they see the benches, they think, oh, the flood mitigation isn't working because it's flooding, instead of realizing like, no, this is actually all supposed to flood. And so making sure that people really clearly understand that, so that we're gonna post signs that flash flooding may occur, etc., so that people just really understand that this is a flood area. That while we have bunches for the dry seasons or when there's not flooding, that it is intentionally supposed to flood. So the town came down, they were really impressed with what happened and how it worked. The engineers were really happy with the results. We haven't gotten a full report yet as to what they could have projected for flooding, but based on what we saw, at minimum they would have had to evacuate several areas along the brook, but in maximum it could have had more severe flooding. So it really did a great job. So that's really good news. Other than that, we're still in the process of hiring for a nurse. We've had second interviews for our SASH for All program, and that is ongoing, but we have hired for our SASH coordinator for Samuel Elliott Apartments and Bellows Falls, and that's great news. His name is David Wright, and he started on the 10th. He has a lot of great energy, and he's bringing a lot of a great background in a wide variety of areas. So no relation to you. Yeah, but he is our third David at the housing organization, so we call him DW at this point because we're just having a hard time keeping track.
Did he come in here?
He isn't going to come here. He's for the traditional SASH. Oh, if there's someone who belongs to SASH and they're a community member, I thought that Ashley was the one that oversaw the community members, but I'm not.
Oh, Ashley, yeah, she's one.
Yeah, so SASH for All will still be based out of here, and that's with Jake, and that's what we're hiring for the SASH for All nurse.
Okay.
But this is specific.
Well, we miss Elizabeth.
Yeah, so I know, she's wonderful. We miss her too. So the SASH program based out of Samuel Elliott Apartments.
I'm sure we like David too.
Yeah, he's great. I'm hopefully when we have the block party, we'll have a lot of staff here. You'll get to meet him. And then the SASH program is starting the mental health clinician to be embedded in the site. So we are having ongoing conversations with HCRS, and that is continuing. We're really excited. We're hoping to get that up and running by October. So we're gonna be working with HCRS to hire for that position. We were supposed to have FEMA representatives come today. They canceled due to the work that they're doing around the state, so they're busy right now. So we're going to reschedule that time, but I just went over the stuff about the flood and the engineer's report, and then you have this newest report. I just wanted to make sure that you've got that. It's for you to look over as well.
Can I just ask one more question about that, that the flooding there, and I did go down and take a look, and it did look like the bridge area was kind of undermined. Was that?
So the way that the bridge, so where the bridge is, the way that the engineers have designed the land is so that it goes down off the bridge. So you have the bridge that's for George Miller Drive, then next to it you have the culvert, which we put in. The water is supposed to go through those areas. It's supposed to slow the water down significantly, and then the off water will continue on the flood mitigation area, and it's designed so that it goes over the road. So that road has to be closed if we ever have flooding during that time. That was done intentionally. And the reason that was done was because they could not, when the engineers designed the land, if they had put a culvert there or if they raised the road, it really wouldn't be able to store water the way we need it to be stored. It wouldn't store as much, and they really were looking to have at least 5 acres of land. They thought about, what they had to weigh the benefits, and the benefit was to close the road was a lot better than having the waters just flood higher and then affect all the areas around the area. So they said that closing that but still allowing people to leave through Melrose was a better option than raising it and putting a culvert, which would not allow for as much water and would not allow for it to flow in the same way. Because I asked the same question. Because I was like, we're going to have to close this all the time, and hopefully we won't, but when we have that severe flooding, we will. But it will prevent that further flooding upstream, which could have potentially harmed that whole area of Melrose anyway. So I think that the benefit of not having to evacuate was higher than closing the road temporarily.
Yeah.
It's nice meeting all of you. I have an 11-year-old dog down there that's having an anxiety attack because it just thundered outside.
Of course, yeah.
I gotta go comfort him.
But it's a great question, and I will send somebody else asked that question, so I asked the engineers for a formal statement on it, and they sent me the information, so I'm happy to share it with the board.
So the water is diverted enough so that no one's stranded and can still access the road behind?
They can still access, they can still access all of Melrose Street, but they can't access that roadway. But as you know, Melrose Street is not the greatest street to get out of, so that is a concern. So we wouldn't close it unless there just wasn't really a better option. And hopefully when the bridge is redesigned further down, that it will make that exit and entrance a lot easier to get out of.
Is that the same bridge they mentioned they were going to they're still waiting, I guess, to reconstruct it to last like?
That's the one that's further. Yeah, that's not the one on George Miller, that's the next one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Old bridge.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Any questions about the report?
Well, I cut you off, that's all.
No, it's okay. Yeah. Any other questions, Michelle?
No.
Okay. So then, other than that, we have we have completed the architect request for qualifications, which should be submitted, the pieces of that in the board packet with the complete timeline. So the legal notice will be published in August on the 12th through the 19th, and with submission dates of September 22nd. So we're getting closer to completing that. Our audit is still underway. That's going to take a little bit of time. We haven't heard yet when the auditors are coming to the main office. And I just wanted to make sure you all knew that the HUD program had been rescheduled to September due to some conflicts. So.
Anything else?
No, I think that's pretty much it.
Great report. Okay. Property review and property managers report. Anybody got any questions?
I'm just always struck by that percent collected and it's circled there, but it's such a big difference between some of the sites, and I wonder why, what are the reasons that some sites are at 91% and some are at 30%? Has anybody identified any?
Yeah.
Is it
Well,
is
one
it the
thing that
mix
really
of-
impacts it, so the numbers that circled is, so if you look across, and I know we've talked about this a little bit, but I think it's important to go over. So if you look at what's prior, so first of all, it has to do with the number. So you look at the number of units. So if you look at the number of units over next to count, so the first one, A.W. Richards, has a smaller number
Oh, yeah.
than most of the other housing sites. So if there is a prior uncollected balance, it's
Right.
going to disproportionately affect the total amount right there. So that's the first piece. So if you look at A.W. Richards, we have that prior uncollected amount under A.
Mhm.
We're looking at the third page. Yeah. So if you look under A, it's $3,606. So that was before this. We already were owed that amount of money. And then this is the number of charges. So $8,000 was charges, transfers, that might be just another number or adjustment. And then the amount to be collected. So you add the monthly amount, which is the $8,000 plus the uncollected amount, and that comes to $11,000. Now, even though we got the amount paid is $7,586, that amount is actually pretty close to the $8,000 amount that we need to collect, right? It's not that much different. It's only a few hundred, but because somebody is in the rears, that amount, it really throws that off.
Yeah.
So if you look at so you look at Red Clover Commons, we had $2,102 in the rears, but we have 55 residents. So we're collecting $21,000 a month. Even so, you know what I mean? Like, so it even though there's an amount there, it's showing up. It doesn't show as much. When you look at Ledgewood Heights, there's $35,000 that we have people in the rears. That's a huge amount. We're only charging $22,000 a month, so that's almost like that's
Right.
double and a half. So 200, you know what I mean? Like, it's a huge percentage higher. So it really skews that balance. And if you see, I wanted to talk a little bit about just rent collection in general. So I didn't print it out because it wasn't ready when we sent the packets, but I know last month we had talked a little bit about just the number of people who were behind in rent and the number of people who were in legal for non-payment. And let me find my sheet. I did break it down. Last month we had talked a little bit about it. So we have 33 people right now in legal. 20. You don't have this, so don't look for it. I didn't print it out for you. So I'll just tell you. So we have 35 people, 35 households in legal. 27 are for non-payment. Okay. Out of that whole group, this is going back from legal from December. Out of that whole group, only 16 are going forward with termination. And, I'm sorry. Out of that whole group, 17 of them, we have not gone forward with termination. So they've resolved the issue. One was for cause that resolved the issue. The others was 16 resolved the issue of non-payment. So out of 35, 16 have resolved their issue and we're not going forward. And then the difference, we're still working with a lot of people, but you know what I mean? Like, so it does get rectified. It just, sometimes with these huge balances, it takes a lot. It takes some more time.
You think with some of these, we're looking at the family sites, the family and everything, sometimes with inflation, everything, I probably that's more so because their families, job loss or job cuts or just everything going up.
It is. Everything is going up. And even though the rent is based on people's income, it's not always, there's all these other expenses that are not based on income. So I think you're right. It definitely causes a ripple effect. And it doesn't take long for people to become really far behind. You know, it's only a month or two where it's really hard for people to make up that difference. So we really encourage people, we have the Stash for All program that works with people. We encourage people to look at outside resources to help them pay back that debt instead of just like owing it to us and trying to pay it off, because the likelihood if people haven't been able to pay their rent for a few months, they're not going to be able to pay their rent plus more. So that it just doesn't work. So we really encourage people to look at outside resources to try to make up that back rent. And as I've said before, you know, we try our best to work, you know, if people communicate with us and they make payments and they're working with us and communicating that they're working with an outside provider, we really do try to work with them. And those are the people who end up usually coming off and paying the debt, or, you know, we work with them. But the hardest part is if we have a resident who just doesn't communicate with us at all until it goes to legal. You know, no matter how many notices we send, there's just no communication. That's when it gets a little bit trickier. But even then, they're allowed to pay into court, and then, you know, to try to go forward with that. But we really want to prevent that, because once it goes to court, there's court costs, which just makes it even harder. Yeah.
Any other questions?
I will say the other piece, just to you know, so for the family sites, whether it's Moore Court or Ledgewood Heights, at the other sites, you know, Red Clover Commons, everyone at the housing sites, rent is based on a fixed income of Social Security. For many of our family sites, there might be their rent might go up because their job, you know, their hours increased, or it might go down. So it's a little less predictable for people. And that can be really hard for families, especially if, you know, someone's income goes up and they don't let us know in time, and then they have to pay that back. You know, we'll create repayment agreements for people when their income went up but they didn't let us know. We will create a repayment agreement for that. But so that can be hard as well. I think we've always seen traditionally at the housing sites which house people who only receive Social Security primarily receive Social Security as their income, they tend to have a more, it just tends to be that people pay it more consistently because they know, okay, well, every month I know this amount is going to come out of it has to come out of that. Whereas it's a little harder with families where their rent costs might be up or down.
Right.
Yeah.
I like the ACH program.
Yeah, having it taken out automatically, that
Yeah,
works well for
I
you.
think it does.
Yeah, I think most people
Yeah.
who are on that feel like it works really well as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That means that it's an automatic withdrawal.
That's good. All right, Resident Wellness Service Report. Does anybody have any questions? And as usual, I want to compliment the creators of all the SASH handouts.
Yeah, they're all great.
They're wonderful.
I'm excited to see the software program moving forward.
Which one?
That software program.
Oh,
is-
yeah. Yeah, that's good. I think that should be really helpful. And we did receive a $25,000 HUD allocation for that, which is great. So we'll be able to use that for the majority of the costs.
All right.
Are they doing, I meant to ask too, the summer lunch programs for the kids up here too? No.
I don't.
The art program we have for right now, and then we have Sean, who is a hip hop dance. He teaches, comes up once a week and teaches
Okay.
kids
Yeah.
moves. And
But I don't think the lunch is being directly delivered here.
not in more.
It's delivered at the at Green Street School next door.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we don't get it here. We have to order it and then
Yeah,
go up to Green Street.
pick it up.
The library has a program.
Yeah, they do. They changed. They used to have it at our housing sites, and they
Right.
changed the locations, and now they're more. I think that they're larger locations, which tries to serve more kids in one place. I think it had to do with some staffing, potentially. Yep. Sorry.
So I learned that the food program that was on Tuesdays and Fridays had stopped. But can you tell me a little bit about the commodity boxes that 13 people got?
Sure.
And what was in that?
Yeah, so the commodities is a program specifically that people can apply for. They have to be eligible by income and age. And I don't know exactly, I mean, what has traditionally been in the commodity boxes are staples, like things like canned food, things that are shelf stable, and cheese in addition to that. They also receive like things like peanut butter, canned fish, canned vegetables, beans, those types of things, shelf stable milk, and they continue to get that. The other program that you're talking about, the one that ended, was they were delivering the Everyone's Eats, which was a great program for many of our residents. So they were getting those at Red Clover. But I know now that she actually set up to have Loaves and Fishes do meal delivery at Red Clover Commons.
Okay, yeah, because after Everyone Eats ended, they had continued meals twice a week, and which were wonderful, but there was some sort of issue recently and it had stopped.
Okay.
And so I was wondering.
Yeah, I'll
what was
ask
being
her about
done
that. I don't know. I didn't know that they stopped.
Yeah, it was, I think, due to a food condition
Oh, okay.
issue.
Okay. Well, I do think, yeah, so Tuesdays and Fridays, Loaves and Fishes were they were getting those meals after Everyone Eats because so many people liked them. But now I think, yeah, we're still doing the food bank program where they just deliver food for people to get. And she said that 25 people attended that from the food bank, from Red Clover in itself. I don't know how many people attend from the other sites, but I do know that they continue to offer those at all the sites. And then people can sign up for the commodity boxes and fill out the application, and they get delivered by the food bank at that time. Yeah. But it is a shame. I think more people liked the Everyone Eats program. People loved it. It was people really, really liked it.
It helped save a lot of money for so many people.
It did, and it was really great for the restaurants to be able to sell their food, and it was just such a cool idea. It was really nice.
There was a lot of healthy options too.
Yeah.
A lot of really healthy
Yeah.
options.
Yeah, we always, we never had extra. People always took them all, so it was great. It was really, really wonderful. And I don't know, if more people are signing up now for Meals on Wheels, but I do know that there have been some funding cuts for that program as well, so,
Okay.
yeah.
Any other questions?
Sorry, Pat.
So, the Moore Court Community Support Session recap was very good. Does anybody have any questions about that?
About which one?
Which color paper is that one?
That's the white sheet.
Oh, there's a
Probably a
Oh,
cat.
I think it's
stuck,
right after
okay.
the statue.
The humidity
Humidity.
stuck it together.
There it is.
It's nice they came together like this, because
Yeah.
you experienced all this. And with children too, and it's,
Yeah. And Nicole came to the meeting that we had with Turning Point and the social worker from the police department. What did you think of that? Did you think
it was great. Wow.
Yeah.
The programs are great. You know, I got to go down to Turning Point, check them out, and it's amazing.
That's great.
All right.
Just wish more people would get involved. It's, you know,
Yeah.
like everywhere else, only a few get involved. It's
Yeah.
not just tourists, everywhere,
Yeah.
a few get involved.
yeah.
But I do know they try. They try to offer a lot of things. So I think it's just the consistency of keep trying. And some programs seem to be pretty, like the art program seems to be pretty well attended by kids, and some of the other programs, but not always the meetings and things like that. But it was great that the people who did came because we got a lot of great feedback from them. Yeah. So thank you for coming.
All right. The HCD Administrator Housing Choice Voucher Program, Shelter Plus Care Report. Does anybody have any questions?
That's the green over here.
This is the green?
Yes.
One question was the gentleman that came the last time from the voucher.
Yeah,
remember?
David D'Angelis.
Was David coming back again to give us some more information on where, I guess?
On what was that?
Well, I guess about as far as with more vouchers or how the program is going on now as far as with any more, that they're opening up and, you know, he said he was gonna give us some, I'm trying to remember from the last meeting.
The one thing I know was that there is a Zoom meeting, and
Yes.
I think I'm supposed to send you that. I apologize. I have to send you the link for the Zoom meeting because we had held he had done a training for
Like a
people.
lunch and learn.
Yeah, a lunch and
oh,
learn, and we
yeah.
had sent it out. And I sent it out a while ago, but I think people must have missed it, so I'll resend it.
Oh.
I forgot from the last meeting. If there are specific questions you have for him, I can definitely ask him to come back. I don't remember that there were ongoing questions. for him.
He was talking about, I think he was kind of talking about the FY22 grant with 16, they really need 23 for the
Yeah,
program,
yeah.
like Children Plus Care.
Mhm. And we did sign an agreement with Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust and Groundworks to offer some of those Shelter Plus Care vouchers specifically for people coming out of corrections. So we're hoping that that will help to fill some of the slots as well.
Good.
And Wyndham Windsor identified that they would house, they would offer the housing, we would offer the voucher, Groundworks would offer the case management. So we do have somebody in the works for that.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. I'm hoping that it just gets renewed.
Definitely, yeah.
Because they know that there's a need, but we're struggling right now to find the case management and the housing piece.
I think probably after that, well, I guess once we see the Zoom meeting to see what he has brought back, and I can just write down questions and we can bring them back. I think
Yeah.
it's more informative that way.
He does have a lot of information,
Yeah,
if there's
it's
questions
good.
about the program for sure. And, right now, as we know, that there's a huge housing shortage. So while we have these vouchers, we don't necessarily have housing.
Right.
So one of the things that we're investigating is whether or not we can submit a voucher for the Moving to Work program, which would allow, so right now there's a cap, HUD has a cap on the number of vouchers you can project base, it's 20%. So if we have, let's say we had 200 vouchers, we could only project base 40 of them. We already have 18 at Red Clover Commons, those are project-based vouchers, so that takes up 18. We have 6 in the community right now, we have some with Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust at the Snow Block and the upper story in those buildings. So right now, we only have a few extra that we would be able to project base. If we were able to submit a voucher to HUD, we may be able to project base all of them if we wanted to, which would alleviate that cap. So that's a question that's going to come across to the board in the next few months as we look at that as a potential option. So, in thinking about what the consequences would be if we project-based more vouchers. So I think essentially we'll need vouchers. As we create housing in the community, we're gonna need a voucher to be tied to those for sure. So it might be good to increase what we are able to offer in terms of project-based vouchers.
That's good. Any other questions? All right. Any questions about the checklisting? Routine checklisting? If not, the May 23rd comparables,
This one, stick.
May 2000.
Oh, here we go.
Sorry.
That's sticky.
Yeah.
Yes,
So we do have 2 of these. I think we did get 2, so we have.
You got one from June, and then the one I just gave you was from
It's July.
Yeah,
Okay.
one was from June, one was from July.
Oh,
June
okay.
19th.
Yeah, 'cause
Yeah, I
it
just gave you the one that I got today, so.
is- confused.
So the comparable is through May. So June was received, but it came out after we mailed the packets.
Okay.
We don't have a meeting in August, however, I traditionally send a packet anyway, smaller, condensed. I will send the comparable for you to have, so then so for our September meeting, you'll probably have 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions about? comparables? Okay. We've got our check signing assignments,
Was it August?
and,
I have October,
I had September.
all set.
Alicia is August.
Yep.
And Gary, you're September.
I believe it was double
You're
check.
October?
October.
With my paperwork, I believe.
now take November.
Okay.
Wait, is that October? No, okay, the month is ahead of it, they say it's September, so I'm September. Okay.
Great,
October.
thank you for your, thank you.
Okay, great.
Usually July right now.
And
Okay, we're on special projects. Litigation, let's see. Engineering report, I've seen that. Miller's Terrace redevelopment. Review architectural service request.
Does anybody have any questions about that? The, either the report from the engineers, not the one I gave you right this second, but the one from the packet, or the, request for qualifications for an architect?
Very clear. Okay.
what will come to the board next about this project?
So the next piece will be, and I think Liz, we have this a little bit on the agenda, we were gonna talk a little bit about board representation at the, for picking the qualified candidates. And, I don't know if Liz, do you wanna talk to that at all, or? And that would be part of the next report, would be, because I think by the time we meet in September, actually, we might not have picked by then, but we will have already received all the proposals.
Mhm.
I think the next time it came to the board, you would have to approve what the group of, the people who are assessing the applications, what they choose, that would come to the board, and then the board would have to decide whether or not they approved the recommendation or not.
Well, we needed somebody from the board to participate, just be eyes on, and I had volunteered to do it, just to have a name out there, but I don't have to be the one. So if anybody else would like to be the one to go to those meetings and be eyes on for reviewing the applications to make sure that they meet the criteria, please speak up. And would anybody here like to volunteer to do that?
Now, when does that come up? When was that?
The request for qualifications comes out in August, and then, let me look at the timeline.
The way I can coordinate if that's something I can do. If that's in our package.
I think that's this one that I have.
Yeah.
Oh, so this is August, okay.
So this is one part of it. It's a much bigger,
Oh, okay.
it's bigger than this, but these are the parts that really you would need to know, because it talks about like what the qualifications are, what the overview of the project is, how we'll advertise for the proposals. It gives a little bit of a description of the specific backgrounds of the building and the housing site. And then it goes into the submission requirements of all the different submissions. So summary of the qualifications, statement of understanding of the proposed scope of services, and identify primary contact people. And then if you look at page 9, it starts to talk about the evaluation criteria. And it clearly breaks down in this category how the proposals will be, how they will be evaluated. So there's 6 different categories and they're broken down with point systems. So understanding the scope of the work, experience and qualifications, reasonableness of fee. We don't have to take the least expensive. It's just we have to look at what's the most reasonable. Creativity and quality of the presentation, quality of references, and the Vermont funding environment. And so there's a point system. So the committee who looks at this, it will be myself, Chris Hart. I think we asked Scott Cusick to also be somebody who would be on this. I don't know if he said yes or not, but he's worked with us. He was the clerk of the works for several projects that we had. And then if there was somebody from the board who was interested, that would be great. So the timeline, as you asked, sorry, is on page 12. So, the notice is issued the 12th through the 19th. Anybody's interested needs to let us know by September 1st. There'll be a walkthrough of the property on September 6th. The final date to submit questions about the RFQ is the 13th. Final responses need to go out from the questions on the 15th. And then proposed submission date and time is September 22nd at 3 p.m. And then the award will be made by the Board of Commissioners at their October meeting there's a typo there. After this, all submitters will receive a notice indicating whether they've received the award or not. So this would be between September 22nd and when the October meeting is. We would have to have, whoever was part of this process would need to work with us, and we'd probably meet maybe once or twice at that time. So sometime after 22nd.
When's that, which month, excuse me?
Of September.
Okay, because you were reading off the dates I didn't. I'm gonna be out of town the 7th of September through the 15th.
Okay.
And but would anybody here like to do that?
What are the days? I've got the dates, but what are the days? I'll look at my calendar because
So due date to notify BHP of interest in receiving addenda or amendments is on the 1st.
Yeah.
Now, we also, the next item kind of is part of this. May I go ahead and bring that up?
Yeah, that's what I was, if you wanted to
Okay.
bring up, I thought that would be
Janet
helpful.
Kramer,
Yeah.
you all know, she was the former chairman, and she stepped down after many years of being on this board. And I had lunch with her the other day and was catching her up with what was going on, and mentioned that we needed a board member to be a part of this process. And I wasn't asking her anything, I was just expressing what we had on our table. And she said she would be delighted to participate. So as a former board member, and she also worked with Chris Hart, helping to develop Red Clover, you and the whole team. So she could do whatever we need her to do. She's glad to volunteer, and this is a volunteer, not to be a board member, but to represent our board at these meetings and be eyes on and then report to us. And I'd like to discuss that and anybody's opinion about that.
I think that'd be advantageous from her experience to bring that knowledge to us. I think that's very important from her being a part of that, and that'd be something that'd help pretty much summarize decisions down the road that you'll be able to make. So I would, for one, agree to that.
Yeah, I really appreciate that offer from her.
Yeah. Michelle, did you ever?
I don't know
No,
her,
that's fine.
I defer to all your opinion on that, I
Yeah.
don't have any
That's fine.
objections.
Yeah. So, and Pat, you were.
I can't do Wednesday nights, and there's 2 Wednesday nights here.
That's fine. So, Christine, have you spoken with Janet?
I haven't. I haven't
Okay.
spoken to her. I haven't had a chance to talk to her yet, but I'm happy to call her after if the board wants to go forward with that. I'm happy to do that.
So, would it be the consensus of the board to go forward with asking her to participate in this role?
I would definitely concur and agree to that. Like I said, current knowledge and experience dealing.
Do we need a vote?
I think it would probably make sense to vote. I think that the one condition would be, hopefully she's able to come to the board meeting in October when we present the award to the board,
Yeah.
so that we can then, the board votes on that. That way, if they have any questions, you obviously can ask me, but you could also ask Janet as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would be good.
And there's no requirement. The requirement is that the board will be approving the whole process, but there's no requirement right now that an active board member
No,
participate. Okay.
No.
No.
no, I thought it would just be helpful, I just wanted to open it up to the group and in case
I'm
people are
curious
interested.
about it. I would be interested to participate as much as I can, but it sounds like there's a lot of interest too, so
Yeah.
I don't feel like we should flood.
Yeah, I mean, it's up to you. So just so you know, with these dates, the majority of these dates wouldn't involve the board member. I mean, because the date is like, we're gonna post in the newspaper. You don't have to be involved in that. Date to notify the BHP of interest. That means that the person who's applying lets us know that they're interested. Then there's the walkthrough. That would be a nice thing to attend, because that would be helpful. It would be the September 6th walkthrough. So whoever is going to participate, that would be a great thing to be at. And then they have to submit their questions by the 13th, and then we have to respond by the 15th. That probably, you would get a record of what those questions are and a record of a response, but that wouldn't be work that the board member had to do by any means. And then the person would submit by the 22nd, and then between the 22nd and the October meeting, we would schedule times to meet as a group. We would work it around all of our schedules to see what made the most sense for people. And then that person would be going through those criteria that I read on the point system. They would look at the bids independently and they would score them themselves. And then once they scored them, we would come together as a group to review the scores. So I just wanted to throw that out, that these dates aren't like, you don't have to be available for all these times. These are just this is how legally, this is how this information is gonna be presented in the timeline. I don't know if that helps.
Well, I'd be happy to participate, maybe alongside Janet.
Good,
Yeah.
that'd be wonderful, absolutely.
Michelle.
Oh, that's
That would be
That'd
outstanding.
be great. Yeah, that would be nice. I think it would be helpful. I think it's helpful just also to learn, and that way, if board members have questions, it's a great opportunity for you to share what you experienced. And this won't be probably the last bid that we have. We'll probably put another bid out for a developer. So it's always good to have, we'll have that knowledge of this process. Yeah.
And I would have to agree with you too, Christine. Site surveys are always the best way to get a better purview
Yeah.
on that. And then along with that, also any questions you might have on the 13th, at the time when they can write it down, bring it to their attention, with the attention then. The final response questions, what is it, the 15th? Will be emailed to all the bidders, I guess? Okay. And then the 22nd is the due date, all right.
And I'm not gonna be able to participate as much as I thought I might be, because I have family medical appointments. So Michelle, with yours and Janet's help, being on the board and our old board member, I think that would just be outstanding, and whatever, anybody else can participate at any level.
And we'll have all the information. We'll submit everything to the board in those packets, so we'll try to get it out to you as soon as possible. So as soon as we have it, we'll try to send it out, even if that means before. That way the board really, you'll have an opportunity to really look at that before we come together and decide at the October meeting.
The only thing I would have to check, I can see the dates, I was gonna find out what day that falls under.
Right,
So
exactly.
I can coordinate that with any of the projects.
Is it the consensus of the board that we have Christine ask Janet to be a part of this process on our behalf?
But also Michelle is gonna be a part of
Yeah.
it too, right? Yeah, so Michelle will be.
That's already given that you're gonna be a part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we need to vote
Maybe
for?
I don't think you need
make
to-
a motion.
Yeah, you can make a motion, you can make a motion.
Motions are
The
good.
motion that we
Confirm.
confirm that Janet Kramer will
participate and work with Michelle on the board participation for the request for qualifications.
Wonderful.
I was
I
second.
second.
Oh, there you go.
Wonderful.
I guess
All in
all in
favor?
favor? Aye.
Aye.
Great.
Great, thank you.
And I'll try to, once I get the days, I can get a better
Right.
idea for me to figure out, because I was looking for the days that they coordinate. I would definitely like to do the site survey.
Well,
That's right
I
up your
think,
alley.
yeah,
Yeah.
that might be specifically for the contractors, but we could do it at a separate time if the board is interested, for sure. You know, that might be a good time for you to ask specific questions, just because
Right.
we really want to make sure that that time is reserved for the people who are putting the bids in, but the board might have their own questions, so it might be better
Mhm.
to have a site visit.
Right,
That's
so this would
separate.
be like the walkthrough pretty much is a site.
It's basically so for the people who are gonna put the proposals in, so that they have an understanding of what the project is.
They can say, oh, this is sand, no, this
Yeah.
is clay. Who knows what they're gonna do.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would definitely come into play. I would love to do that, if it's permissible, do a site survey, because it's always good to know rather than to see pictures, and you get a better idea, perspective when you do it on site.
And so what they're putting bids on is to be the architect to look at the project and determine, should we keep the buildings, should we not keep the buildings, does it make more sense to build a whole new building? So that's what this is really about, is to get an architect to give us an assessment. We would like to keep the buildings, but but until we really bring an architect in, it's gonna be hard to know exactly what needs to get done. No matter what happens, abatement needs to be done to the project, whether we demolish it or we keep them. So we have to, it's one or the other. So I think in that sense, I don't know what the best time for the board to come in would be, but we can certainly have that discussion in September and decide what we wanna do before October.
Absolutely.
Now, I guess my last final Jeopardy question is, when something like that goes forward, do you give them like an idea of your vision on how you would like to see?
I mean, we would probably say that we would be interested in seeing if these buildings are viable
Mhm.
and if it makes sense, and how many people we could essentially house with these buildings. That's what we'll start with. I think that's what it sort of, like, I'm briefly saying this, but that's what it says in the scope of the RFQ. And then they may say, well, you could house 50 people here. Let's do a proposal for that.
Right, because everyone has their own different purview, their vision, when projects go through. Because, you have to figure out what best suits, not just right about the people, because they can come with something.
So this is
completely-
just picking the architect. This isn't picking the plan. This is just picking who's gonna do the work.
Okay, that comes later.
Yeah, yep. So you'll have plenty of time to have input about that with architects, yeah. Yeah.
Perfect. Any other discussion about this? All right. Okay. BHOI. report
Yeah.
Update.
So, Lorelei, Marcette, and I met since our last meeting, and I came up with 4 names of people I directly asked to be a part of our board. So it's a nonprofit organization for Brattleboro Housing Partnerships, and it was in existence 5 years ago, and now this year we're starting it up again. So we're looking for new members of the community to be a part of it, and we're looking for people who have board development experience and financial fundraising experience and grant writing experience. So out of the 4 people that I asked, one person said she'd think about it. But after the meeting, I did decide, due to personal reasons, that I am needing to resign from that board, but still be a part of this one. So just as the board representative, I can't do both right now. So yeah.
Totally understand.
And I think Lorelei, she did write the minutes from our last meeting. I didn't see it on this,
I
but
didn't get
but
them.
she
Yeah.
she does have those. So
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
we'll just submit those for next month.
yeah.
So one piece, we looked at the bylaws of this, we don't actually have to have a board member on the board. We do need to have a report out to the board. So that's the most important thing. And we already laid out how BHOI will bring, you know, if they decide what projects they want to go forward with, then they bring it to this board, and then this board makes sure that it aligns with the values of BHP, and then it goes forward so that that board can't kind of go off on its own and start doing its own thing. The role of that board is primarily to raise money. It's not the type of board, this is a different board in terms of, this is a governance board, so you decide on policy. This board is very specifically, we're looking for people specifically who like to fundraise and are good at, you know, I like to do it, are good at it, have knowledge about it, because that is really, it's not a hugely active board other than all we're trying to do is get money so that we can then use it in our projects. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Like the one big project that we're currently looking for funds for is the playground at Ledgewood Heights.
Right.
So that's the biggest project.
And we've already raised a pretty substantial amount of money, and we applied for an earmark from Bernie Sanders for $75,000. I don't know. We haven't heard yet whether or not we haven't heard no, but we haven't heard anything else, so we don't know. But yeah, continue to raise those funds. That's what that is really for. It's not a development board. It's just, you know, development in terms of property. It's just specifically to raise money. So if anybody knows anyone who loves to do that, I know that that's a hard ask because there's just not a lot of people in this area that are really have that expertise, and most boards snatch them up pretty quickly. But if you know of anyone, please send them our way.
Absolutely.
And I'll keep you updated about the one person who said maybe.
Okay, well, we're very grateful you chose this board to
Yeah,
stay on.
thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Appreciative of your service, thank you.
Thank you.
And your
Any other
efforts.
business?
No?
Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
And motion that we adjourn.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are now adjourned.
Use the gavel now, Liz. I love me some.